Hello, welcome back. It's a very dark and grey day, but it's like this in my country, Denmark, every day in the winter. Not always, but normal is not the middle is 11, but it's very, very dark. And I'm not putting light on because I'm watching a YouTube video. I was watching a game video. But let's read this.
Atomic bombings of Hiroshima and Nagasaki. This is a good article. Click here for more information. Page semi-protected. Operation Centerboard, part of the Pacific War of World War II. Aerial photos of atomic bomb mushroom clouds over two Japanese cities in 1945. Atomic bomb mushroom clouds over Hiroshima, left, and Nagasaki, right. Type nuclear bombing location Hiroshima and Nagasaki, Japan. Date 6 and the 9th of August 1945. Executed by Manhattan Project. 509th Composite Group 1770 U.S. Casualties Hiroshima 70,000 126,000 civilians killed. 7,000 20,000 soldiers killed. 12 Allied prisoners of war. Nagasaki 60,000 80,000 killed, within 4 months. 150 plus soldiers killed. 813 Allied prisoners of war. Total killed 129,000 226,000. On the 6th and the 9th of August 1945. The United States detonated 2 atomic bombs over the Japanese cities of Hiroshima and Nagasaki respectively. The bombings killed between 129,000 and 226,000 people, most of whom were civilians, and remain the only use of nuclear weapons in an armed conflict. Japan surrendered to the Allies on the 15th of August. 6 days after the bombing of Nagasaki and the Soviet Union's declaration of war against Japan and invasion of Japanese-occupied Manchuria. The Japanese government signed the Instrument of Surrender on 2 September, effectively ending the war. In the final year of World War II, the Allies prepared for a costly invasion of the Japanese mainland. This undertaking was preceded by a conventional bombing and firebombing campaign that devastated 64 Japanese cities. The war in the European theater concluded when Germany surrendered on the 8th of May 1945, and the Allies turned their full attention to the Pacific War. By July 1945, the Allies' Manhattan Project had produced 2 types of atomic bombs. Little Boy, an enriched uranium gun-type fission weapon, and Fat Man, a plutonium implosion-type nuclear weapon. The 509th Composite Group of the United States Army Air Forces was trained and equipped with the specialized silver plate version of the Boeing B-29 Super Fortress and deployed to Tinian in the Mariana Islands. The Allies called for the unconditional surrender of the Imperial Japanese Armed Forces in the Potsdam Declaration on the 26th of July 1945, the alternative being prompt and utter destruction. The Japanese government ignored the ultimatum. The consent of the United Kingdom was obtained for bombing, as was required by the Quebec Agreement, and orders were issued on the 25th of July by General Thomas Handy, the acting Chief of Staff of the United States Army, for atomic bombs to be used against Hiroshima, Kokura, Nagate, and Nagasaki. These targets were chosen because they were large urban areas that also held militarily significant facilities. On the 6th of August, a little boy was dropped on Hiroshima. 3 days later, a fat man was dropped on Nagasaki. Over the next 2 to 4 months, the effects of the atomic bombings killed between 90,000 and 146,000 people in Hiroshima and 60,000 and 80,000 people in Nagasaki. Roughly half occurred on the first day. 4 months afterward, many people continued to die from the effects of burns, radiation sickness, and injuries, compounded by illness and malnutrition. Though Hiroshima had a sizable military garrison, most of the dead were civilians. Scholars have extensively studied the effects of the bombings on the social and political character of subsequent world history and popular culture, and there is still much debate concerning the ethical and legal justification for the bombings. Supporters claim that the atomic bombings were necessary to bring an end to war with minimal casualties. Critics believe that the bombings were unnecessary for the war's end and a war crime, and highlight the moral and ethical implications of the intentional nuclear attack on civilians. Background: Pacific War. A map of East Asia and the Western Pacific during World War II. Situation of the Pacific War on the 1st of August, 1945. White and green. Areas still controlled by Japan included Korea, Taiwan, Indochina, and much of China, including most of the main cities, and the Dutch East Indies red. Allied held areas gray. Neutral Soviet Union in 1945. The Pacific War between the Empire of Japan and the Allies entered its 4th year. Most Japanese military units fought fiercely, ensuring that Allied victory would come at an enormous cost. The 1.25 million battle casualties incurred in total by the United States in World War II included both military personnel killed in action and wounded in action. Nearly 1 million of the casualties occurred during the last year of the war, from June 1944 to June 1945. In December 1944, American battle casualties hit an all-time monthly high of 88,000 as a result of the German Ardennes offensive. Worried by the losses sustained, President Roosevelt suggested the use of atomic bombs on Germany as soon as possible, but was informed the first use of atomic weapons were still months away. 1. America's reserves of manpower were running out. Deferments for groups such as agricultural workers were tightened, and there was consideration of drafting women. At the same time, the public was becoming war-weary, and demanding that long-serving servicemen be sent home. 2. In the Pacific, the Allies returned to the Philippines. 3. Recaptured Burma. 4. And invaded Borneo. 5. Offensives were undertaken to reduce the Japanese forces remaining in Bougainville, New Guinea and the Philippines. 6. In April 1945, American forces landed on Okinawa, where heavy fighting continued until June. Along the way, the ratio of Japanese-to-American casualties dropped from 5 to 1 in the Philippines to 2 to 1 on Okinawa. 2. Although some Japanese soldiers were taken prisoner, most fought until they were killed or committed suicide. Nearly 99% of the 21,000 defenders of Iwo Jima were killed. Of the 117,000 Okinawan and Japanese troops defending Okinawa in April to June 1945, 94% were killed. Winking sad smiley 7,401 Japanese soldiers surrendered, an unprecedentedly large number. 8. As the Allies advanced towards Japan, conditions became steadily worse for the Japanese people. Japan's merchant fleet declined from 5,250,000 gross tons in 1941 to 1,560,000 tons in March 1945. And 557,000 tons in August 1945. Lack of raw materials forced the Japanese war economy into a steep decline after the middle of 1944. The civilian economy, which had slowly deteriorated throughout the war, reached disastrous levels by the middle of 1945. The loss of shipping also affected the fishing fleet, and the 1945 catch was only 22% of that in 1941. The 1945 rice harvest was the worst since 1909, and hunger and malnutrition became widespread. U.S. industrial production was overwhelmingly superior to Japan's. By 1943, the U.S. produced almost 100,000 aircraft a year, compared to Japan's production of 70,000 for the entire war. In February 1945, Prince Fumimaro Kono advised Emperor Hirohito that defeat was inevitable, and urged him to abdicate. 9. Preparations to invade Japan. Even before the surrender of Nazi Germany on the 8th of May 1945, plans were underway for the largest operation of the Pacific War, Operation Downfall, the Allied invasion of Japan. 10. The operation had two parts, set to begin in October 1945. Operation Olympic involved a series of landings by the U.S. 6th Army intended to capture the southern third of the southernmost main Japanese island, KYSH. 11. This was followed in March 1946 by Operation Coronet, the capture of the Kand Plain, near Tokyo, on the main Japanese island of Hunch by the U.S. 1st, 8th and 10th Armies, as well as a Commonwealth Corps made up of Australian, British and Canadian divisions. The target date was chosen to allow for Olympic to complete its objectives, for troops to be redeployed from Europe, and the Japanese winter to pass. 12. Uncle Sam holding a spanner, rolling up his sleeves. U.S. Army propaganda poster depicting Uncle Sam preparing the public for the invasion of Japan after the of the war with Germania and Italy. Japan's geography made this invasion plan obvious to the Japanese. They were able to predict the Allied invasion plans accurately and thus adjust a defensive plan, Operation Ketsug, accordingly. The Japanese planned an all-out defense of KYSH, with little left in reserve. 13. In all there were 2.3 million Japanese army troops prepared to defend the home islands, backed by a civilian militia of 28 million. Casualty predictions varied widely, but were extremely high. The Vice Chief of the Imperial Japanese Navy General Staff, Vice Admiral Takajinishi, predicted up to 20 million Japanese deaths. 14. The Americans were alarmed by the Japanese build-up, which was accurately tracked through ultra-intelligence. 15. On the 15th of June, 1945, a study by the Joint War Plans Committee, 16, who provided planning information to the Joint Chiefs of Staff, estimated that Olympic would result in 130,000 to 220,000 U.S. casualties, with U.S. dead in the range from 25,000 to 46,000. 17. Secretary of War Henry L. Stimson commissioned his own study by Quincy Wright and William Shockley, who estimated the invading Allies would suffer between 1.7 and 4 million casualties, of whom between 400,000 and 800,000 would be dead, while Japanese fatalities would have been around 5 to 10 million. 18. 19. Marshall began contemplating the use of a weapon that was readily available and which assuredly can decrease the cost in American lives. Poison gas. 20. Quantities of phosgene, mustard gas, tear gas and cyanogen chloride were moved to Luzon from stockpiles in Australia and New Guinea in preparation for Operation Olympic, and MacArthur ensured that chemical warfare service units were trained in the use. 20. Consideration was also given to using biological weapons. 21. Air raids on Japan. Black and white photo of a four-engined World War II-era aircraft being viewed from above while it is flying over a city. A large cloud of smoke is visible immediately below the aircraft. a B-29 over Osaka on the 1st of June 1945. While the United States had developed plans for an air campaign against Japan prior to the Pacific War, the capture of Allied bases in the Western Pacific in the first weeks of the conflict meant that the ice offensive did not begin until mid-1944, when the long-range B-29 Superfortress became ready for use in combat. 22. Operation Matterhorn involved India-based B-29